I do think, because I am a socialist, and even if I am sympathetic to this conception, this endeavor to create some new path philosophically, I think you should just be a socialist, man. I think like his Nazi era, it's just more clear. What you're trying to do is more clear because you're trying to achieve some version of socialism, and maybe I disagree with a bunch of
maybe
what
a
you're saying,
reactionary form of socialism, but I knew what you were fucking talking about. Like,
yeah, I knew what you were talking about. Now I'm not really sure. Like I don't. I feel less clear now that I've read this table. And if I was grading it, I would say, hey, you should redo the assignment.
okay, so then we get to him doing some language stuff. Of course, this consideration of these columns is in itself brings us some very interesting conclusions, starting with the question of what theory is in terms of science, contemplation, vision, theoria. That's kind of true. I mean, contemplation is the normal translation of theoria in Aristotle. Like, and these categories are Aristotelian, like straight up. But anyway, and what is praxis? The term formed from the Greek pragma, like pragmatism, means object, objectification, or acting. When the problem is finding what a thing is, res here after reality arose a few years ago. The attempts to come across a counterpart to the basic term in contemporary philosophy led to a revelation. There is no acceptable equivalent for this Latin word in Greek at all. There is pragma as an action or act at the same time. It is an active object, but it is not an accomplishment. And there is an existent from Aristotle, which is expounded as res in further Latin translations. Therefore, there is no such word as thing in Greek, which I think is actually somewhat true in ancient Greek. I don't know if it's true in modern Greek. I'd have to look it up. And this is important because it means the very concept of reality is also absent. Reality is formed on the basis of res, meaning reality is a property of res. Reality is who's what, something referring to the thing or thingness. Therefore, there are Greek words, pragma, existent, or practice for the Latin res. Pragma is the action and the object at the same time. This is what, by the way, this is a gloss on Heidegger. This is a gloss on Heidegger reading Aristotle.
And that would be something that, again, I just think would be so helpful to just say. Because if you just said it, you could defend it or something. But instead, you're just like, probably because he doesn't figure most people will know.
Yeah.
But what's funny about that is like he doesn't shy away from being Heideggerian in his thinking. He's very comfortable. He's even says like Heidegger is like the most important philosopher since Plato, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's just like most other things. This could just be more helpful by being more fleshed out.
Well, I mean, I do think he is also playing with categories that are implicit in Greek language, although there is the weird thing that he's talking about how the Greek, since it doesn't have this word, implies this word that's in Latin, which is res, which is reality, or, we might call ontos or ontology, which is what Heidegger comes up with, this whole thing about being and non-being. Anyway, it is very interesting. The entirety of Greek metaphysics evolves between theory as contemplation and action praxis. Again, I actually do think you have to mention poiesis here. It's in a triad of categories in Aristotle.
Yeah.
That Heidegger cared about. Theoria and praxis as being separate like that comes from like Hegel and Moses Hess, and that's where it ends up in Marx, right? Like, keeping short of the severe Latin subjectivity, the thingness sitting in the term res. If we amplify the aforementioned duality of this table, we come across Guénon's model of the principle of manifested. Now, I do find this interesting because this perennialism shows up in stupid hippie shit today. I mean, I'm serious about this. The perennial like hermetics and stuff shows up today and like third-hand knockoff occult shit. Like manifestation boards and whatever. But anyway, notably that the manifestation is closer to the praxis, but not to which is manifested. We see the activity in the second column concerning practice. If we make some further assertions in the history and sociology of religion, we would come across the functionalism and human sociology of Malinowski, which examines the division between myth and ritual. I remember learning this in anthropology, so this did not totally blindside me. The original Greek definition of myth must be remembered. Myth is a story being told during a ritual, and the way that like liturgy is in Christian thinking. So are the Devar Torah is in Jewish. Like there's a reason why you repeat the stories of the Bible during liturgical practices, which are ritual. You're Catholic, you know. Yeah. Protestants have no idea. But
I mean, actually, I think a lot of Catholics have no idea either. But I do think that they should. And yeah, you're right.
Well, they experience it still. I mean, that is what you do at church. I say this as a non-Catholic.
And I find it to be it's beautiful beyond description. But I know what we're doing, and I think it matters that you know.
Right.
You can't.
Oh, I agree with you. Duality of myth and ritual is one of the basic items extensively discussed in both the history of religion and the social anthropology. In philosophy, we can be seen as mental activity and our mental activity, this pairing with the duality of the term and singular is theory practice. And finally, technology is rather simple. Duality of the project and its realization. So I would say duality of the plan and its realization, but again, that just might be the way we're translating the Russian. So we have two columns. If four political theories added to the first column, term one, then we can probably see the specific concept and fourth political theory in place of the column in term two in accordance with it. If the fourth political theory was an ideological variation or some combination of the elements of the political theories of modernity, we would follow this strictly. That is to say, we create an additional concept constructed of the same elements based on the same topography as the political ideologies of modernity, that we should talk about the field not only theoretically but also in practice. And generally, it would be interesting to do so because talking about semantic fields associated with fourth political theory in conjunction with the column two could be very useful. But I leave the problem for someone else and propose another way. This is why I said this was useless. Why the fuck did we go through that just to say that it wasn't useful?
I leave the problem for someone else and suggest another way. It's kind of like when you read Capital Volume 2 and you read Engels has a note periodically throughout the book, but you go like read a really torturous, twisting a page or two of like calculations and whatever, and then at the very end, Engels will say, Herr Marx was not very good at calculations, and all this stuff is a little bit wrong. You should probably ignore it. It's like that's the kind of note you should say at the beginning of a passage, not at the end of a passage.
Yeah, that was. People always, implicated that Engels really edited Marx, and when I actually read it, I'm like, no, he didn't edit him enough.
Yeah, like if you've ever submitted an article to a journal and had the editor like reword or cut sections out, then you look at Engels and his the way he treated Marx. Engels definitely did not edit Marx nearly enough.
But then we get the drop that all this is actually leading up to Heidegger anyway, which, by the way, I know Heidegger well enough to know what Dugin was doing. So without even knowing this was coming up, I was like, oh shit, he's recapitulating Heidegger. Oh, we get Dasein as the answer to the problem. The vaguest concept in all of philosophy.
And I do not think it's a useless concept. But I do not think it is a replacement for like the nation and the class.
Subject-object duality and all that.
You can't say rather than nation or class or something else or the individual. You should just say Dasein. It's like no, Dasein is an experience. It's it's a way to situate the individual within a class as part of a nation or whatever. But like it's not a be all. It's not a replacement for these other categories. Not
it's
in the way that
almost
he's
a
using it.
tautology.
Yeah, it's almost a tautology.
The fact that we can talk about being means that being is.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
but what is
yeah, which also was almost an obvious play if you know any German.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, now I have to get into this gloss on Being in Time, which, you know, Being in Time is a monstrosity of a book that I use to punish people, both by throwing it at their heads and also making them read it. But
throwing at their heads in every sense of the word, in every way that you could say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's 600 pages of stuff that I was like, is this just a fucking pun? But anyway, but
I have never read it, and I feel like I should, but I also don't want to.
You should, and you should do it the way that like aesthetics in the 12th century whipped themselves before Christ. Like, it's just a punishment to yourself. It might be good for you. I'm not actually even sure it's that, but like
well, but now I will read it, and with that in mind, I will read it in exactly that way.
There are two books I read because I felt like I had to just prove that I was capable. There's kind of three. My other one was getting through all 3 volumes of Capital and then reading Theories of Surplus Value, all 3 volumes, to say like, I have read them. Leave me alone.
I will say, at the risk of sounding like a real pedant, I will say I do think reading Capital in its entirety, it makes you smarter.
I would agree with you. Even though volumes 2 and volumes 3 are a mess.
Yeah, and it's not to say that because the stuff that's in there, if you know it, then you're smarter. I mean, like, if you discipline yourself enough to actually read the whole series and actually put it all together into, like, to be able to recapitulate a thesis, a thought, which is a completed, basically it's a thought that comes from which you could say, this is what Marx thought about this. Yeah, I think that process, that effort, it would make you smarter.
Yeah. But I also read Finnegan's Wake and Being in Time as part of that. Like, I will finish these things. And I read them. I would say on the latter two, I still don't understand Finnegan's Wake. I just experienced it as a wave of 800 pages of pretty words. And
some people smoke DMT, some people go into like really serious meditation, some people read Finnegan's Wake.
I've done 2 of those things.
Well, I've only done 2 as well because I've never read Finnegan's Wake.
So no, I've probably done 3 of them now I think about it. I have done epic meditation things. And what's weird to me is this Heidegger stuff actually reminds me of Buddhist philosophy, but in a way that's like less clear.
Hell yeah. That's what you really want. I want it to be like Buddhist philosophy, but less clear.
Yeah. Like, I want to deal with unbecoming and being an unbeing, but in a way that's even less clear than in dharmic categories.
I do think that actually, like, reading books of this kind that we're talking about, it's worth doing. And that's one of the ways that I would say people should read the Phenomenology of Spirit, which even to Hegel was like, this is the beginning of an overall system. So the very first thing to do, you have to get through the phenomenology, and that will rattle your brain and shake it loose and start to reshape how you think of things.
So that you need to read the shorter and longer logics, and then
But if you read them out of order, you're never going to make sense of any of it at all.
No, because they actually are written in a particular order for a reason. Like you go through the phenomenology, then you come back to the logic, then you go through like the kind of historical anthropological philosophy that Hegel develops, and like the history of the science of religion or lectures in history, like that stuff. Like, I spent a lot of my late 20s reading a shit ton of Hegel. Do I feel like I understand the world better for it? Kinda. Am I a Hegelian? A little bit. Like,
probably enough. I mean, I don't, that's, I think what it really means to, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, well, what I will say is it helps you navigate the world. That's what I'll say.
I will also say with Hegel in particular, and with a certain degree Heidegger too, you do have to struggle with some of the stuff in the original language because it has multiple meanings, and I think in both cases they mean both. Whereas when you translate them into English, you tend, like when you translate Hegel's phenomenology into English, for example, you can either focus on the kind of idea structural elements of it, or you can focus on the religious elements of it. But like those words in German have both connotations on purpose.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, Heidegger. Heidegger mentions the Inzwischen, are in between, are liminal, is how we would probably use the Latin to get to that because it's easier for us to say.
Yeah.
While talking about the existence of Dasein, the principal nature of Dasein is being between. Dasein is the Inzwischen. It should not be used as the system of classical political dualism, the scientific tautology of both modernity and Aristotle's time, while talking about fourth political theory. And I will tell you, I was philosophically prepared for this from Buddhism. Because Buddhism, like when you talk about nothingness in Buddhism and emptiness, people equate emptiness with nothingness.
Right.
But shunyata is not nothingness. Sunyata is unformedness, which means infinite possibility.
That's very different. Although you could problematize this even more by saying that would depend on what you understand nothingness to actually be.
Right. Where Heidegger thinks nothingness doesn't exist, and well, duh, it doesn't exist, right? But he actually thinks the only reason we can talk about it is a function of language. Like, that's a Heideggerian stance. But
I feel like I would. Well, whatever. I would probably disagree.
Probably do disagree because zero makes math work.
Yeah.
Like, but anyway, So Dasein is in between. It is neither becoming nor just being. It is somewhere between becoming and being. Okay, just so I want normies to be able to understand what's at stake here. It's an answer to like the difference between like the focus on being in classical philosophy, the focus on becoming in Hegelian philosophy, are in pre-classical philosophy was also concerned with becoming, like Nietzsche and Heraclitus, all that. Okay.